Hello and welcome, one and all, and it is time for a special episode. Keen eyes will have noticed that I did not do an episode last week, and it wasn't tied into the holiday of the 4th of July. It was because I honestly didn't like episode 42. It was basically a nothing episode to me, but it's like in-game plot important, so I have to talk at least a little bit about it. But basically, it would have been a really short episode that just went over the basic points and then just complained for a minute and went on. That'll be like, what, a 5-minute episode? So I decided not to do that one, and now we are on episode 43, and I kind of like this episode. It's a Ren episode, so it's not like great and all, but it's a pretty decent episode. It's certainly better than last week's episode, at least especially in terms of the fights. So this is a double feature about episode or chapter 42, the beginning of a beautiful end, and chapter 43, Clash the Value of Existence. So let's just go over them in order about what exactly the episodes were about, and then bring general thoughts on the whole 2 episodes together. Shall we? So first off, episode 42. This episode is primarily about one thing and one thing only, and everything after that is kind of an afterthought, and that is Tassel's death. If you remember at the end of episode 41, or the last episode that we talked about, Storios had shown up into Wonderworld and was in Victor or Tassel's house. Storios was basically going after Tassel in order to claim his book so that he could have all the power of the original 5. And so basically a bulk of the episode is dealing with that. Storios chasing Tassel around for a minute before Tassel begs him to basically go back to how he was and when they were still friends before before Storios kills Tassel. And honestly, it's a pretty good scene. Because this is a character that we've had since the very first episode, so it's kind of a shame to see him killed. But we kind of saw it coming, especially after he revealed his backstory. But yeah, it was a pretty good scene, and it's kind of funny because the actors were joking about it on social media in like the funniest image. That if I can find it, I'm probably gonna make the image for this segment, I believe. Don't know, might maybe do it. Anyway. That's the bulk of the episode, and after that, the heroes have to stop the encroachment of Wonderworld because without its guardian there, it's basically enveloping into the real world, and so, they do that, and when doing that, Toma finds Storios, and he also ends up being attacked by Disaster, who wants to kill Storios so he can be free because he's dying. And then there's not even a fight. It just kind of ends with Disaster getting a chunk taken out of him by Storios, and Storios leaves. That's the episode. And Toma finds out that Storios has the book. That's the episode. Now, outside of a moment where Luna and May talk for a minute, and yeah, that's basically the episode. Pretty much just focus on one big scene. And that was it. See, I told you it would have been short. Anyway, let's move on to something with a bit more meat, but honestly not even that much meat. Episode 43. Now, this one is a bit more, falls up obviously from the episode from last week. In this particular episode, everyone's basically trying to figure out where Storios is, trying to find his hidden base and stop his ultimate plans. Meanwhile, Disaster and Ren are going at it because Disaster is dying, and Ren, basically him and Ren have this thing, and Ren is trying to grow stronger. It's weird. I honestly, this segment is like the bulk of the episode, and it's a pretty good segment. The action's really good with Disaster and Ren fighting, but honestly, I don't care that much because it's Ren. The episode's trying its hardest to make me care, but honestly, Ren's character is so loosely defined as a character. Compared to even the other 3, I'm just gonna call them background Logos members. Him, Daisenji, and Ogami. Out of the three of them, Ren is obviously the lesser one. Even Daisenji, whose character is basically super into swords and then gets kind of crazy in a fight, that's basically his whole character written in two phrases. And honestly, Ogami's probably the only one of the three that has any sense of depth in his relationship to Kento. At least when Kento's still going through his, father issues arc. But Ren is the one of the characters that suffers the most from the show's lack of focus on, well, much of anything, in all honesty, outside of Toma getting power. And I don't want to make comparisons to Ghost, but it honestly feels a lot like Ghost in that front, and how it has a lot of side characters running around, and how most of them really don't do anything, and it's just all about the main character being super duper special. And that's fine and all, but then you give your side characters super emotional stuff without really much build up to it. Like we've had how many episodes of Ren and Disaster? Like we saw them on screen together. Like I can only think of like two, maybe 2.5 episodes where these two being a pair was even explored for more than a minute. Let's not even count the episodes where they're not even there. Let's just talk about the episodes where they're a pair for even more than a few minutes. Like I really want to care about this moment, and I care about Disaster because Disaster I like his suit design. He's a somewhat interesting side villain, and he has a pretty cool way of fighting, especially in this show. But he just doesn't really do anything. I don't know if this was an official thing or if it's just someone who made a Disaster suit for themselves. But for like episodes on end after he freed himself by killing I'm forgetting names again, but the previous Caliber, there were just social media posts just disastering around in random spots because people were expecting him to come back sooner, but he just didn't come back. And it's just like now, like the show, I don't know if that was official or not. If that was official, that was brilliant. But even you guys joked about how little you use the character when you're trying to make it a big emotional payoff for Ren's character arc, when you barely gave Ren a character arc and barely used his ass at all. Again, this is why I think one of Saber's biggest faults is this big ass cast of characters. It's like, yeah, there's a reason most of Ryuki's 13 writers were either movie exclusive, like 2 of them were only movie exclusive, and most of them died after like 3 episodes. As much as I don't really like Ryuki as much compared to its equivalent in Dragon Knight. Anyway, the fight itself is actually pretty cool. Like I like it. It's a pretty cool sword fight, and that song that they play in the middle of said fight, that was pretty good. Like again, it's trying its hardest to make me care. I just can't work up any energy to care. Anyway, I'm imagining this would have been a short episode by itself too. Anyway, so after we deal with that, and there's a moment where Disaster's dying, and he tells Ren to eat red ginger in his ramen, and I'm going to be a filthy American and admit I don't know what exactly red ginger is in context of ramen. Like, is it a topping? Because I believe he's eating it later in the episode, like before the next episode preview. But I don't know what it looks. But I don't really see anything different than the normal cup noodle stuff. That's just me being a filthy American who he likes ramen, would love to learn more about it and eat more of it because it's pretty good. Anyway, so after that fight, Ren obviously takes the Sword of Nothingness, so now he has the Sword of Nothingness and his own Sword of Wind. He probably will not be doing anything with that sword. I would love for him to actually do something with it, especially considering the fact that he's the one character that we know who does actively dual wield, but I doubt he will get a new form from using the powers. Anyway, we move on from that and we go back to the main plot because this is actually a side plot of the episode that takes up the bulk of the episode. We go back to the main plot of everyone trying to find out where Storios is. So basically they come up with two plans. One is go to everywhere Storios has been before, or made a major appearance. Or it sounds like a pretty dumb plan, but you're really throwing needles in the haystack, so you gotta do whatever you can. And the other plan is to use Kento's future visions, because I think that retcon him pulling a Homura and having experienced those possible futures, and them just being visions of potential futures that he foresaw. I liked the former idea better because it sounded like a much more fun idea, but the latter option does make a lot more sense in the context of how those visions worked, or how he interpreted them. Anyway, so they're going to use Kento's visions of the future to help them find a way to basically help them locate Storios. Because, he saw future visions where Storios, they fought Storios and actually managed to beat him on a handful of occasions. Although, again, in those futures, then Master Logos would destroy the world. But in this case, Master Logos has been taken care of. So, now it's just all Storios. So Toma, so basically everyone runs off, and Mei goes with Rentaro, and I'm mentioning Mei because she does something pretty important for the episode, because she runs across the Shindai siblings, and the elder brother basically gives her a thanks. I forget what for. I'm assuming it's from when she helped nurse him back to health after Master Logos kicked his ass. Although I may be forgetting their interactions because I really don't care that much about the Sendai brother. Like, I like his suit. I like the suit for Durandal. I just don't like Durandal's character all that much in comparison to Sabala, who... I like Sabala's character a bit more because, she actually has somewhat of an arc, but Durandal just feels kind of random to me. And how he's a super stern, serious character. But, they did work in a kind of weird joke where she immediately got jealous that Mei was touching her brother. And I'm just reminded of that random joke in Ghost where Spectre got really happy to have a bunch of his younger sister in cosplay in that one Dream episode. And that always stood out to me because of how weird it felt. And I'll probably talk about that more when I talk about Ghost, but man, that moment felt really weird for his character, and they never explained it beyond that. I know that we joke about incest in anime and how it keeps popping up every so often, and, Kamen Rider is an anime, but let's be honest, it kind of is anime at times, especially with this whole power of friendship shit that's been going down in this series. But come on, can we avoid certain anime tropes, please? There's only so much incest one can take in their life before this becomes annoying as hell. And I'm saying that as someone who watched Emo and Domestic Girlfriend. Oh God, why is this such a common trait in Japanese fiction? Anyway, so basically she asked them to kind of go back up Toma, because Toma kind of accidentally finds Storios' base. And I'm gonna be honest, Storios' base, like the way he finds it, he just hears voices screaming for help. And at first I'm thinking, wait, are those the voices of... Because at the end of the 41, at the end of 42, we heard voices from the books that Storios had gathered, like the 5 books of the first ones. But that wasn't those books that we heard. We later now know in this episode that all the people that Storios and the other Megiddo have turned into Megiddo and then into one Alter Bride books, they're still conscious inside of the books, and they are screaming out for help. And that is some downright nightmare fuel right there. It's like, holy shit, this is horrifying. And then the sheer amount of books he has, that is just a double whammy of, whoa, this has got dark as shit, like real quick. I kind of love it. Anyway, I'm also reminded of a Doctor Who episode where a bunch of people were. I don't remember it exactly right. I just remember the one scene, especially in the beginning, where someone's explaining a situation, and then it ends with them yelling, "I don't know where I am," because she's stuck in the computer, and it zooms out to a bunch of people yelling that exact same phrase, like, "I don't know where I am," because they're all stuck in the computer. And I was like, damn, that was a lot of nightmare fucking fuel right there for an intro. I swear, Doctor Who sometimes is a horror story. Anyway, Charybdis, and I'm just gonna call her Red Sophia for as little as she is important at all, or in this episode. They meet Charybdis and Red Sophia, and Charybdis is talking all formal-like, and it feels kind of weird. Like, I know he's supposed to get smarter over time, but it really feels weird, especially when he wasn't talking like this in his last appearance a few episodes ago. Anyway, Charybdis and Red Sophia are there. Toma tries to talk to Red Sophia, but she just knocks him back, and so Storios walks in and commands Charybdis to eat all of the Ultra-Right books that are present in the room, which they're all lined up on shelves facing out so you can see the screaming faces. So you see a shit ton of them. So Charybdis just opens up its big mouth and eats like a ton at once, and then he orders it to eat Red Sophia. I'm just like, okay, what is going on right now? So, Charybdis eats them and Red Sophia, and then they have a fight. And it's pretty cool because Charybdis uses the whole teleport to different stages thing that Megiddo can do to teleport them across different, places and stuff. And it's kind of cool. And I kind of wish there were more enemies that did this, just in general, because I kind of like the idea of just being teleported to a different spot. It's like the only good part of Thor 2, the final battle where it's just like fighting with portals. So yeah, they do that, and then there's a moment where Durandal's about to be eaten, but then Toma, does the whole "let me copy your sword" thing, and so because he can copy everyone's swords as cross saber, and manages to save the day with some time stop, and I honestly do like the Durandal and Sabella teaming up parts because. Obviously these two have trained together for probably their whole lives as the Swords of Logos assassins. So not over that. So them having a really good pairing or being really good in sync with each other makes a lot of sense, and it's really cool to see it in action. Kind of wish they got more screen time where they weren't asshole villains. Anyway, and then Sabella gets mad at Toma for using her brother's sword. And it's just like, woman, time and place. And he just saved your brother's ass too. Anyway, Sorio shows up to end the fight by it's weird because he summons the books of the first ones, and then it looks like he shoots out 3 of the books that the group dodges, and then he orders Charybdis to finish it, and then Charybdis eats them. And then it's like, wait, what's going on now? And then after Charybdis swallows, its body breaks apart, and then Storios is standing there holding a book of some type. And is that his book? Or is it something else? I don't know, is it the book for Kamen Rider Storios? I'm questioning what this book is, and I just don't know. Especially because I think he was trying to combine himself with all the power sources, but then he shut out 3 of the 5 first ones books he had. So I'm just curious about what this book he has is. And then Luna reacts and just says, "Oh, the world's about to end." Because does he have the Book of Destiny now? Because he acts like he says he has all the knowledge. So I'm like, do you have the Book of Destiny inside of your head? This episode leaves me with a shit ton of questions. It honestly makes me want to look forward to the next episode, but not next week's episode. I'll explain in a second. Alright, so next week's episode technically isn't a counted episode in the episode count. It's a special crossover episode to commemorate the Tyson movie crossover between Kamen Rider Saber and the Zenkaiger Super Sentai team. This is actually the first Tyson movie that has come out since the X-Aid one. I forget the name of it because Tyson movies are notoriously bad. And for what I saw of the X-Aid one, it was also pretty not good. But if you're a fan of just the idea of them crossing over, it's all the hype. If you're just there for that element of it and don't really care about story or stuff like that. Hopefully the fight scenes will be pretty good because I'm probably not going to watch it if I don't have to, but I still like the potential for there to be good fight scenes. So next week's episode is a crossover between the Zenkaiger to celebrate that, and Zenkaiger will also have their crossover episode to celebrate the movie. And it feels weird because, technically speaking, Super Sentai and Kamen Rider have had like random crossover episodes every so often. So it's like, oh, the Red Ranger of a certain team will randomly show up, and we'll have to fight a villain for 5 minutes before we move on to the actual plot. And same thing with the Super Sentai side. From what I've heard, I still haven't seen one of their episodes yet. I did watch the X-Aid one, and it was kind of weird how... Okay, the Cure Ranger? I keep mixing up the pronunciation of Cure Ranger and Kyryuger because they sound so similar and they're spelled close enough. Anyway, he just showed up randomly and helped X-Aid fight a random enemy. I mean, it wasn't a random enemy, but still. And then, I believe in their equivalent episode, they just had an X-Aid summoning device. Their tools are called Q-Tamas, and they just had an X-Aid Q-Tama that they used to summon X-Aid. And it felt kind of weird. But no, this will be a whole episode early. Sorry. Mouth is getting dry now. This will be 2 whole episodes just about the 2 teams crossing over, so we get a little bit more of them interacting, which is good. I jokingly said the whole teams, but really it's just Zox, the 6th Ranger of the Zenkaiger, although he's technically not a member of their group, but he helps them. It's weird. He's crossing over to the Saber world, and Durandal and Sabella are crossing into the Zenkaiger world. And if you think it's going to be a mixed match thing, no, Zox is still in the Zenkaiger episode. So this is just more of Zox basically being the favorite character. And I get it because honestly, from what I've seen in Zenkaiger, Zox is probably my favorite character in Zenkaiger because he's just a funny character. And, the whole dancing to transform thing is it's goofy as all hell, but I kind of love it. I'll talk more about those episodes maybe potentially next week if I decide to watch them and talk about them, if they turn out to be any good. I feel weird because they put Durandal in the Zenkaiger episode, and his whole character thing is he's super serious, and if they put him in Zenkaiger, which is a super silly show, it feels really weird, and I know why they're doing it, to get the serious guy with the super silly team and have them interact with each other. It just feels kind of weird. I'd have honestly preferred if they put maybe someone like Slash or Buster in there. I don't know, give them more focus. The Sendai siblings have been around for a minute, and they've been given a lot of attention. I honestly would have rather preferred they did something with either Buster or Slash. Hell, even Ren. I would have preferred Ren. Just so they have a ninja rep, because I'm still sad that Zenkaiger still doesn't have a ninja rep, considering how many ninja Sentai teams there are. Still sad about that. Anyway. Overall, I've talked almost 5 minutes about next week's episode just because of the potential and because I haven't talked about Zenkaiger. Anyway, for these 2 episodes, episode 42, okay, it's probably my least favorite episode of Saber. I don't hate it because, hate's a pretty strong word, but I just like it. I don't really care too much for the episode, After Victor dies, it's basically just, it's over. I don't want to see anymore. And like, yeah, the stuff with his ass is cool, but it's not really paid off at all in the episode. And the episode just kind of ends. And honestly, if we watch 42 and 43 back to back, it feels more fulfilling that way than just watching the episodes individually. Damn, it's a two episode structure again, isn't it? God damn it, Kamen Rider. But 43, I actually like 43 a lot. Like, I don't care about Ren. I like Disaster, even if they didn't really use him a lot. But I have to admit, that fight, that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool fight between the two. It felt pretty gritty. Gritty's probably the wrong word there. But it was a pretty cool fight. There was an attempt at emotional payoff for a character arc. And that song that played in the middle of the fight, that was a pretty good song. I liked it. Everything else rounding up, it just wasn't the right character. And Ren, or if they had bothered to develop Ren's character or show the pair as a pair more, then I probably would have given two more shits about Ren having to kill his ass. It's like I still question were they friends or not, because I honestly still can't tell if they're supposed to be friends or not, especially, after this episode. Anyway, the stuff of Storios, while I would have liked an explanation for what exactly the fuck he's doing, especially with the crypt that's eating everything thing, the whole room full of screaming books thing, that's gonna stick with me for a minute, and I'm kind of happy, because I was like, I need my Kamen Rider what the fuckery moment in this season. Because almost every season has that one kind of what the fuck moment. What was 01's what the fuckery? I mean, outside of everything about the arc. But there's almost one kind of horror-esque moment, and I think that goes back to Ichigo, and how, technically speaking, when you think about Ichigo, that was a very fucked up scenario. Considering he was kidnapped and turned into a cyborg against his will. But that plays the theme of Kamen Rider. Anyway, I desperately look forward to the what the fuckery in every season, and the whole room full of screaming books that was the what the fuckery for this season, and I kinda loved it. And then Crib just ate all the books. I'm just like, oh, where is this going? Also, the fighting against Cryptus, that was also pretty good too. Again, I kind of like the teleporting around, the fighting with portals fights. So yeah, overall, these two episodes together, pretty good. 42 on its own, not that great. 43, pretty good on its own, but enhanced by 42, as it should be, because as you know, sequential series and all that stuff. Episodes fall into each other, it rhymes, all that kind of crap. So overall, coming away positive on these two episodes. Next week, I'm not getting the answers I want, but at least I might get an entertaining, fun episode. I'm not the biggest fan of Zenkaiser. I skip around the episodes a lot, but it's still a pretty fun show. For a sillier Super Sentai season, it's a pretty fun show, and I guess that's all I can ask of the anniversary season. But I would prefer if it had a bit more meat to it, if you get what I mean by that. I'll talk more about Zenkaiser next week. But I'm hoping to get a fun episode out of these two episodes together. Especially because we're entering Saber's final arc. But there might be episode skips at least until August, because apparently they're gonna be some episodes. I heard a rumor about that they're gonna skip a week or two of Saber for the Olympics, and I'm just kind of mad about that, because I really don't care about the Olympics outside of the Akira jokes everyone keeps making. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this week. Overall, as I said earlier, Ren is still the worst written character in Saber, and I honestly feel he's a victim of having to share so much screen time between such a large cast. But overall, I came away liking the two-parter. these two episodes combined, and I just want another cool fight, and I want someone to exactly explain what Storyhouse is doing, because I am still confused. Like, I know he wants the Book of Destiny, but I think we need Storyhouse to exposit his backstory for a minute or two or something. I don't know, just something to give him more of a character outside of maniacal villain at this point.